If you started following me in 2024, then you know that this past year was the year of big backtivities. As a full-time food content creator, I definitely leaned into the fullness that comes with the territory and ended up gaining quite a bit of weight, and I'm not proud to say it, but this is the biggest I've ever been. So to start the year off on a better note, let's make some meal preps, but with a Vietnamese flair. This recipe is what I like to call Vietnamese Chipotle, but essentially it's just a lemongrass pork chop rice bowl in the style of how Chipotle does their burrito bowls. This recipe is an adaptation of my standard lemongrass pork chop recipe, but with some slight adjustments to make it a little bit more calorie friendly. So do me a favor and make sure you like, comment, share, and save this video. Alright y'all, remember to wash your hands. Now the first step is marinating our pork. So I have about 2 pounds of pork chops and we'll get that into our mixing bowl, and then we'll add in 2 tablespoons of minced lemongrass. Now I like processing my lemongrass in bulk and storing it in the freezer, so I always have some handy, but all you have to do is trim your lemongrass, remove the outer woodsy layer, and then cutting it into smaller pieces before throwing in a food processor and blending it down to a fine mince. Now back to the marinade, we'll add in a tablespoon of minced garlic, 2 tablespoons of low sodium soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of oyster sauce, and a tablespoon of fish sauce. Then to balance out the salty and savory notes, we'll add in 2 tablespoons of honey, and we'll round out our marinade with a teaspoon of chicken bouillon, a splash of oil, and some black pepper. We'll get our hands dirty and give that a good mix, and we'll let that vibe out in the fridge for half an hour while we get the rest of our prep work done. Now we're going to mimic Chipotle and how we prep our veggies. So first I have some romaine lettuce that I've washed, and I'm just gonna finely shred that with a knife. And if you like this recipe and you want to learn how to make more of your favorite Vietnamese inspired meal preps, make sure you subscribe and turn on your notifications to stay up to date on all my latest posts. Then I have an English cucumber, and instead of a traditional slice, we'll dice it into cubes. And then remember, we always gotta pay the cucumber tax. And lastly, I have a Roma tomato, and we'll also dice that up in the same way you would for a pico de gallo. Now once we have all of our veggies prepped, we'll move that to the side and we'll make our sauce. Now this is probably the most caloric dense part of our recipe, but there's really no way around it because you have to have this nuoc cham, and I'm not willing to make any sacrifices here. So for my standard nuoc cham recipe, we'll start with a 1/4 cup of sugar, a 1/4 cup of fish sauce, and a 1.25 cups of filtered water. Just remember the golden ratio of 1 to 1 to 5. Now to the sauce, we'll add in a tablespoon of minced garlic, some chopped Thai chilies, and the juice of half a lime. We'll give that a good mix, making sure that the sugar is fully dissolved. We'll move that to the side, and then it's finally time to cook. Now, I'm using an air fryer today, but you can definitely use your oven instead if you're making a big batch. And with any air fryer or oven, there's going to be some variances in time and temperature, and another variable you'll have to consider is also the thickness of the pork itself. My pork chops are about 3/4 of an inch, so we'll air fry mine at 375 for 8 to 10 minutes, flipping halfway in between. And the rule of thumb here is to use a thermometer to make sure that you cook the pork to at least a safe internal temperature of 145. Now when the pork chops are done cooking, we'll let the pork chops rest for just a couple of minutes, and then we'll dice it into some bite-sized cubes. Now I'm going to be meal prepping a few of these and I'll show you how I do that, but I'm also going to be making one to eat immediately as well. So first we'll get about a cup of cooked white jasmine rice into each container, and I will say that white rice tends to get a really bad rap, but for meal preps, it's actually not as bad as you would think. When rice is cooked, cooled, and refrigerated, its starches go through a process called retrogradation, where its starches reorganize into a resistant starch that behaves much more like fiber would, meaning that those resistant starches reduces the amount of calorie absorption because they don't get fully digested in the small intestine. Also, these resistant starches have a lower glycemic response, causing a slower and steadier rise in blood sugar compared to freshly cooked rice. Anyways, Asian folks have been eating white rice for a long time, and it tastes way better than brown rice could ever. Now to our meal prep containers, we'll add a handful of shredded lettuce, some diced tomatoes, our cucumbers, and then we'll ladle a couple of tablespoons of our nuoc cham into a sauce container. And the last part is adding our diced lemongrass pork chops. Now these meal preps are good in the fridge for about 3 to 4 days, and I promise they will be tastier than any boring basic meal prep. Now for the portion I'm eating today, we'll get some rice into the bottom of the container. We'll top that with all the same veggies and diced pork chop, and we'll ladle some of our sauce right over it. We'll give that a good mix and dive right in. And just like that, you've made my version of a Vietnamese Chipotle at home. As always, the recipe and measurements are on my blog at feedthepudge.com. And a final closing note, for my own health and fitness journey, I'm not too overly concerned about the total macro breakdown of each individual meal, and I never want to restrict the foods and ingredients that I love and enjoy. So for me, I'm more concerned about controlling my portion sizes and eating at a caloric deficit instead. And for me, that's just a much more sustainable way to get a little bit healthier. Now, as a disclaimer, I'm not a fitness guru or a medical professional by any means, so make sure you get in contact with the right nutritionist or doctor before making any significant life changes in your own health and fitness journey. Now, if you've made it this far, let me know in the comments section what's a New Year's resolution you've made this year. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy. I could eat this every single day.